sense. That means mech suits, robot summons, and even something that they call invent.
The thing I'd worry a bit about, yeah, let me turn it up. The thing I'd worry a bit about, like, Titan technology would be, I think they'd find a way to make it very boring. I don't think they'd make it the most entertaining, tinkery fantasy, which a lot of people really want. And I think they could go off on a bit of a tangent. I mean, Blizzard do have a habit of doing that. I hope that they don't, but just something that worries me.
Inventions, which are custom made.
It'd be like
spells.
Mimron.
That sounds awesome, and if Blizzard wants to sell copies, well, I think that'll actually get people's interest. Now, another obvious entry is the Necromancer. We don't have much of a description here because everybody knows what a Necromancer does.
Play classic
and
yeah.
I think everyone wants to play one. You see,
here's the thing.
Is the Necromancer. We don't have much of a description here because everybody knows what a Necromancer does, and
So this would be like the pure summoner. This would probably end up being my main. The thing with a Necromancer coming into the game is that most likely you might end up losing a lot of the summons on Unholy DK. Unholy might get completely reworked to go from either just a standalone like magic warrior using plague magic, or it might just get completely changed to a completely different fantasy. But Demolock would most likely probably just get removed. I can imagine my main getting flat out deleted for Necromancer to be a part of the game, which would annoy me. Gonna be honest. Like, how many classes have now? Like, really, DK's took our Death Coil. Havoc took our Metamorphosis. DH in general took our Metamorphosis. What hasn't been taken? So, yeah. Yeah, I would be worried about Necromancer coming in. I think that would, honestly, either Demonology would get reworked to be more of a caster type thing, power back into the Warlock, but I don't think we'd have a Master Summoner Demonology again. Is this going to be a thing, or is it just a default? It's a default. Basically, Blizz put out a poll for potential different classes, and yeah, this is hang on, I'm going to move my character so it's out of the way. I think Unholy would suffer from its army playstyle, but it'd become more plague. That would be the trade-off. Necro would be the Unholy army, but yeah, I mean, Blizzard also do have like borderline carbon copies of the same spec. Look at Affliction Warlock and Shadow Priest, basically the same spec. Just Shadow Priest is a slightly easier version of it. God, what was the other one I had in mind? Something, or I mean, even Fury and Arms on the same class, it's almost the same. It's just different animations to achieve the same sort of goal. And slightly different rage build up, but the same sort of build of spender. A lot of things in WoW are pretty much the exact same. So maybe they'll get completely unaffected, and Necromancer will just come in and be, hey, here's another flavor you can try. But yeah, I can very much imagine a Necromancer. Yeah, very true. But I could very much imagine a Necromancer being like DPS spec, summon big army, healer spec, like transfer of life from enemies to allies, and a tank spec, build up some big beefy bone armor, siphon blood. It would be like Blood DK again. That's the thing. I don't think they could do Necromancer without copying specs from other Yeah, just copying of other classes' specs. I haven't raided 3 Necromancers on Paul lagging out the whole raid. That would be funny. That would be very funny. But yeah, let's see what else is here.
I think everyone wants to play one. You see, Demonology Warlock is one form of what some other MMOs would call a horde class. World of Warcraft hasn't actually had a pure horde class in the way that some other games have, so yeah, there is some overlap, obviously, with Demonology and Unholy DK, but I do think it's something Blizzard could actually pull off. Moving on then, the survey brings up the Bard, but not just some random fella with a lute. No, this time it is them using the Song of Azeroth for their magic.
So, what is the Song of Azeroth, like the Radiant song? It'd be a bit weird, but that actually sounds better than just singing songs. But a bard's introduction into WoW would be so bad for the game. I mean, objectively speaking, augmentation does need to be removed from the game or reworked into a DPS. Like, there are people that like aug, it's fair enough, but objectively speaking, it has made the game so much worse. And there'll be more players by a large margin who'll be happy with aug being removed than who are happy with it being in the game. That's where you're wrong. If they add in more supports, then they are just gonna screw over the game. The problem is WoW is not a game built for support. Like, you have healers, which are the closest thing you could probably get to a support, but the thing is, people want to be in control. They want to play their character. They want to just do what they can on their character. They don't want to have to be even more reliant on other players. I know it's a team game, but you already have an archetype where you have your tank, you have your healer, and you have your DPS players. You now throw a support in the mix, and that's another person you need to know is on point for you to do your job. Now, I've explained this quite a few times, but one of the key things to keep player retention is by giving players controls over their actions. If players don't have control over their actions, then they get bored. Like, why would you play something where you can't actually control what's going to happen? You just don't stay retained. You don't keep playing the game, and there you go. Objectively, that's bad. You lose customers. You don't want that. So that's the problem with supports. And now the thing is, I'll throw in a counter argument. You have Overwatch, which is, instead of healers, you have supports. You know, you've got, say, Lucio, for example, who swap between like making you faster or healing you, and that's fine. Like, they had an archetype where at the front, first and foremost, your supports are supports, not healers. They just have the added benefit that healing is part of the support toolkit, which it can be. If they wanted to create supports in WoW, then healers, every healer would probably have to be reworked into some form of support, instead of making a new role. That would be the issue. And yeah, having to line up all this stuff, like, at that point, you can be the most skillful player in the world, but if this guy playing support sucks, then you will look bad. Not them. They'll be fine, because they can say, oh, I'm a support, I don't do anything. But you're the one who's going to be getting the backlash for them being bad. And that's the problem with supports in WoW. If my Orc Voker sucks, and I have to play with one, then I look like a bad player. If I go on the logs, yeah, if I get a PI, then I'm going to be judged with every other player who's got a PI. Now, if I got PI'd at a really bad time, I could potentially lose DPS, and then I'm going to look like a shit player on the logs. But if I don't get PI, and I do really well, then I'm not going to be compared there. And it's... WoW is just the sort of game where it feels better not to have people supporting you. No, I think just don't have PI. Don't have these support abilities. Just let the healers purely heal. Because if you think about it, WoW players aren't the greatest players in games. Like priests, they will learn their spec. But then they won't learn how to use PI at all. They'll just put it on someone and call it a day. But they'll call themselves good. They'll say, "Oh, yep, no, I've done everything I need to do." And then they'll start being, "Well, I just gave you a buff. Why are you complaining?" Well, I'm complaining because you did it badly, and you're now negatively affecting my performance. Like, that's the problem. People don't want to look bad. And so, yeah, just having an ability like PI, it gives multiple problems. You have a blame target for your performance sucking, which causes drama. You have a blame target if you're not given it, because if you really want it, but you're not given it, then you're going to start having to go at people. More drama. So that's one problem. A lot of drama behind the spells. You have the other issue, where it will negatively affect your performance if it's done at the wrong time, and it's reliant on someone else's skill and timing. And the third problem is, shit gets nerfed because of PI. PI doesn't get nerfed, but other stuff gets nerfed. Demonology was in a very good spot in Shadowlands. Was actually fine. Pretty well balanced. But because it was getting PI, the Demolocks that got PI'd at the right time were doing insane numbers. What was the issue? Well, it was just PI. Without PI, Demo was balanced. With PI, Demo was absolutely not balanced. That shit was busted. And, like, it wasn't really fair numbers, if we're being honest. And so, you've then got a problem of, well, something has to be done to return the balance. Blizzard just got a Demo. And then Demo was like, well, now the spells I enjoy are gone. Again. And, yeah, it's now just an unenjoyable spec. So yeah, that's why. You don't even need add-ons and weak auras though. It, like, quite simply, all you have to do is ask, when do you want PI? Get something like big debuffs or something, set the person on focus, and they'll usually be like, oh, when I press combust, when I press tyrant, or when I use my whisper macro. And then at that point, you, like, sure, 1 or 2 seconds lenience, because you'll be finishing a global, then you press it, and then boom. Right, you can use PI properly. But, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. I really hope they do call back on the add-on situation, because also, Nate, you absolute bumder. Never, don't be putting ideas in people's heads, alright? Hope you're doing well, man. But yeah, the thing is, people have an over-reliance on add-ons, in my opinion. They rely on the add-on to tell them exactly what to do, and they don't think for themselves. Which is why they're constantly dying to swirlies, doing low DPS or HPS, not being able to taunt swap on time, because they rely on what the add-on tells them to do. Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of players who can play with add-ons and do play to a very high level with add-ons. It happens. But the average Joe just says, oh, these guys use add-ons, it makes them better, cool, I'm going to use it. I'm going to follow it like a gospel. No. It's a supporting tool. not your guide, not your cheat sheet, not the thing to tell you what to do. Anyway, back to the video. I think we're a bit off
And
topic.
it's Blizzard again suggesting another tank, healer, and DPS combo class, one that is specifically focused on support. So basically, it would be taking all of their augmentation evoker, like, learnings, and kind of weaving that into a big full class. And look, I know when most people think of a bard, they think of some fella at a tavern. I totally get that, but if Blizzard were to do it in that way, I actually think it would feel unique to World of Warcraft, unique to the setting, unique to the lore, and that would actually help it stand apart. Okay, the next...
I mean, he's not wrong. It would be very unique, especially using the Song of Azeroth, and like getting a tank out of Bard would be an interesting experiment. Would it be good for a live service game as expensive as this one is? No. 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 I don't mind if they did some side project, which are just some sandbox, right? We're creating all sorts of manner of goofy shit for you to try out. It's not part of any seasonal thing. Just have fun with it and see how it goes. Part of the game, no.
Next two then are fan favorites. They're pretty simple. There's the Warden, which will be using chat rooms and traps at mixed range, and then the very long away.
So this would be entertaining. It would be like a demon hunter, but of course more moon magic, more powers of the loon. I just think Warden would fit in the game so well. It's a shame because, like, lore-wise, literally, there's only one race that could play it. But I mean, in like, let's be real, WoW's fantasy is dead. They just do some quest line and be like, "Oh, hello, orc. Congratulations. Welcome to joining the Wardens." Right. But yeah, throwing around chakrams, trapping stuff would be sick. Probably using quite a bit of lunar magic as well. I think that'd be really, really cool. Yeah, Warden would be a very fun sort of melee DPS.
Weighted Spellbreaker, which would basically be an anti-magic melee that would be
Anti-magic melee. Death Knight exists. No, I'm sorry. Melee exists. What melee isn't anti-magic? Think about it. Death Knight, AMZ, AMS, Paladin, Spell Warding, Warrior, Spell Reflect, bloody Rogue, Cloak of Shadows. Like, what? I don't see a justification for this. Nah.
enchanting
I think this is dumb.
gear. That all sounds pretty damn awesome. Now, this list also does just totally go off the rails.
Hear me out. If it were Spellblade instead of a Spellbreaker, that could be cool. Much cooler. Like, there's something that's like, okay. And I'd imagine it more to be DPS specs rather than anything. But it'd be like, right, you got one spec where you're using a big two-hander. Like, going around like Farak, for example. Got your big axe, spreading fire and shit everywhere, causing devastation. You got another which is more arcane versed, some one-handers, being quick and nimble, shooting your swords about, maybe you have living weapons and whatnot. Be very cool. And then another spec, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Spellblade Battle Mage, whatever you want to call it. And then another spec which may use more ranged weapons, and go from there. Not too sure what I'd do for a final one. Maybe that'd be a tank where you just pick up this fat shield, conjure it to stay alive and shit. Or even hear me out, like the more arcane one uses its attacks to leech out life and heal their allies. Nah, I haven't played Skyrim. Always played Battle Mage in that, yeah. See, my ideal fantasy for a class is picking up a massive axe and going around absolutely clobbering people and supporting what you do with big death magic stuff. Like, if I could design a class in WoW, it'd be sort of like a Death Knight, in a way, fantasy-wise, not gameplay-wise. Where like the bulk of your rotation is using your melee abilities, and then you have magic-based cooldowns, doing certain things like some big cooldowns, some big-ass rituals, doing some big devastating damage, flashy visuals and whatnot. But it'd mainly be running around, doing a bit of melee weaving, retreating out, throwing out some spells, and cycling between that. I think that'd be really good. But yeah, chance of that ever happening, little to none.
There are some ones that jumped out as just being crazy, but they kind of make sense. Titan Killer and Prismatic. Now,
Okay.
Titan Killer is said...
Titan Killers combine the sword fragmentation like Gorbel to use the power of Gorshlight and connect to cosmic powers of Titan to destroy any threat to Azeroth. This would be interesting. This might actually be the sort of thing I'm on about. Like, taking a big-ass weapon, using cosmic magic. That I could see being a main. This sounds really interesting. Yeah, that sounds way cooler. This is literally what I just talked about. But, nah, I actually haven't. I'm just saying, this is my thing. Oh, excuse me. But, yeah, no, you like, I think they'd have to change up the magics used. But yeah, I think it'd be awesome. Like I say, I don't think this would fit well for a healer, but I feel like you could give something else a healer instead. Like, you could definitely get a tank out of this. But I feel like if you make a healer for this, it's literally gonna be the third iteration of Restoration Druid. Like, we have Restoration, cool. We have Presvoke. Well, no, so we have Resto Druid, great. We have Resto Shaman, alright. What's this? Some random person's inviting me to a group. No. Then you've got Preservation. But then now you'd have Titan Slayer healer. No, at that point it'd be done. More of a Juggernaut style onto Arms Warrior. I think Arms Warrior just needs to be reworked to be that heavy hitting Juggernaut tactician. That's what I think would be better, rather than its current design, when it is just effectively a now a reskinned Fury Warrior. I think you could keep Fury Warrior as is, but add some new new buttons for arms, resort the rage economy, and play around with something like that. Yeah, pretty much. Like, and the bleed upkeep is, quite honestly, it's handled itself, so you don't even care about the bleed upkeep. Like, the reality of Arms Warrior is just, how can you get the biggest mortal strike possible? Now keep doing that. That's what you do. In your 6-second windows when mortal strike's on cooldown, your entire gameplay is trying to buff the next mortal strike, and you keep doing that again and again and again. Even execute windows, it's not, oh, execute's the big button now. No, it's still mortal strike. There needs to be something new for arms, I feel like. It could really do with a yeah, exactly, like mortal strike and execute is just there's your bleed management sorted. But yeah, no, arms could do it for rework in my opinion. Something a bit more like Fury's fine. It's fast paced. You're a berserker, great. It fits perfectly that it's a brain off spec. It should be. You're just going berserk and smashing your keyboard. That's a perfect berserker. Hold on. But arms, meant to be a tactician, meant to be something you think about, but you don't. Like, realistically, you go in, You bleed, you Mortal Strike. As many overpowers as you can, you Mortal Strike. Ever you get an execute before your next Mortal Strike, or you press it over your overpowers, and you Mortal Strike. Oh, sorry. Demolish is sick, but it adds nothing to the gameplay. It's just, oh, here's a 90-second cooldown which you press every once in a while. That's it. There needs to be something more, in my opinion. Yeah. It's like one cool button every 90 seconds. Anyway.
To combine
this would be
and
sick.
Gorabal, which are
Titan
the
Killer
swords
would be
of
so
Agrimar
good.
and Sargeras, to create their true form, Gorshalak the Dark Render. And that's pretty cool because if you know the lore, that is the semi-sentient sword that broke itself into pieces whenever Sargeras went mad in order to protect the universe. All pretty cool, crazy stuff. They would basically be connecting to cosmic powers of the Titans to defend.
Like, hear me out. There would be a Titan-based spec, sort of fire-based spec, like Sargeras and Agrimar, or maybe even Fel-based, and then there'd be a Void-based spec. That would be how they should play out, in my opinion. And all of them would draw on, like, sort of cosmic stuff. Like, imagine a bit of utility, which, like, I'm summoning a black hole now. That'd be sick.
Azeroth, which, as a lore-wise concept, does sound pretty damn cool. That being said, is that a full class, maybe the anti-Titan version of the Demon Hunter, or is that something that's a bit more of a warrior hero talent? The same with Prismatic as well.
If that was a warrior hero talent, that'd be so disappointing. Prismatic, though. Heirs to the Titanic power, Prismatics are carriers of cosmic powers that can not only be used from transcending the powers but merged into new powers. Find and focus the power of life to heal allies or powers with order to protect themselves. They merge combined powers of death and shadow to deal damage to the enemy. So this, I'd imagine that this is a sort of caster, yeah. And while this could be cool, I think all the concepts here are just how other specs could be reworked. I mean, we don't need a fourth restoration in the game. We have the OG restorations. Now we have preservation. This would just be a fourth one. Like, nature healer, we've got that 3 times over. We don't need another one. As for a cosmic caster, it, like, after playing Balance Druid recently, Balance Druid literally is an astromancer. I don't know what they'd do differently. There's not much nature, really. It's very much astral. How, like, order, like, come on, at this point, you would just be doing a slightly reskinned Protection Paladin. And then Death and Shadow, I'm just imagining, is gonna be, like, probably gonna remake Affliction Warlock or something. Like, I don't know. If they make it more like Shadowlands-esque and whatnot, then great. But like that, you just saying Affliction Warlock to me. If you think about it, Affliction Warlock isn't really a warlock. There's no Fel involved. It's just using Death and Shadow magic. But yeah, no. Prismatic is just already done.
Prismatics are, quote, heirs to titanic power, who can use their purest powers of the cosmos like life, order, death, and shadow to heal, tank, and DPS. And again, to me that sounds like, I mean, maybe a class, but also perhaps a bit of a mage hero talent tree, or an advanced class, something like that. Because of course many games do have advanced classes on top of what they usually ship. Plus, there's a very heavy focus here on the power coming from the Titans and from Azeroth. Another example is Leyweaver. That's another advanced mage-sounding class that's found in this.
Yeah, I agree. That, like, first look, this is definitely a mage sort of thing. Like, this just sounds like a build you could do for Arcane Mage. Like, you could split the talent tree into traditional Arcane Mage and Leyweaver Arcane Mage.
survey. It uses Azeroth's ley lines to teleport about the place, as well, of course, as to heal, DPS, and support. There's also the Artificer, which in the survey specifically calls out to using handmade machines and Titan technology to do all three roles, which again does sound a little bit like a Titan Tinker. But within its
This just sounds like a Wish.com version of Tinker. Honestly.
description, there are some real exciting touches, things like extendable flails and reactive shields. Sounds
So, brigades are in Overwatch. You've already made that, Blizz. Bit off topic, but it would be cool to see if you Bladestorm replaced with Blade Flurry, like spamming attacks in a big rage. Yeah, I could see that being pretty cool. I don't know, like, I'm gonna keep it real. I never felt like Bladestorm fit the vibe of ARMS. I feel like ARMS should have something different. I feel like Bladestorm more fits a Berserker than it does a Juggernaut or Tactician.
kind of awesome. And then there's the Witch, and this is really, really cool.
This I could imagine being like an occultist type thing, which should be sick. Like, this I would play. This could potentially take all the dot nature out of Affliction, and out of Unholy as well, so that those specs can actually be more true to their classes. This would be very Drust based, which I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, it even says there, like, yeah, I could just see this being a very cool class. Just a nice little dark caster would be awesome.
Would be using old dark magic like Troll Voodoo.
No, because what they can do with Warlock is actually tie it into the Fel. Like, you won't be taking anything out of Destruction. I'm like, okay, yeah. Warlock would just be left with Destruction. But, you know, they could make Demonology, then be like, right, okay. Demonology is a unique summoner where you summon things and take their power to become more powerful. Is the whole true Warlock doesn't need to summon infernal horrors, they become the infernal horror. So you think about it, the other specs now, like Destro has big summons baked into its toolkit, Affliction has big summons baked into its toolkit, so Demonology should just go back to being the Metamorphosis caster, which everyone knows and loves, and like just a complete rework. Imagine instead of like soul shards and whatnot, your spells were just building up demonic corruption, which you'd then use to maintain a demon form and deal huge damage and be more demonic like in how you play, instead of being like, oh, I summon an army. Well, if you can give that to Necromancer. In fact, you can even add the army more to Destruction instead. Like, Dimensional Rift, okay, out pops the Imps. It makes a bit more sense than a Meteor. Like, Hand of Gwydion is cool, but I don't get why it summons Imps. Add dogs to Affliction. You've had that aesthetic in Diablo 3 for ages. It would make a good bit of sense. Be something to try and empower your dots. I think it'd be good.
The Drustvar sort of witch magic, all of that decay stuff that we saw the Gnolls use in Dragonflight, all of that into a witch. I think that would be sick. And then after that, there's a few more generic ones, like the Gunner and the Gunslinger, which would both be dual-wielding pistols. Hell yes to that. The Gunner would be using elemental buffs on their guns and ammo, while the Gunslinger would just be shooting enemies. And honestly, after playing a whole bunch of Mercenary and Path of Exile 2, oh,
yeah.
Hell yeah, I could do with that.
Gunslinger would be sick.
The
Gunner would be
Apothecary.
boring.
It's another healer, support, and DPS using
This could be
potions
cool.
that they combine. And there's also Battle Mage, which of all of these just sounds a little bit undercooked. There's a quick line about empowering weapons with elements and creating
This is what we spoke about earlier.
which just sounds like a mage-ish.
The Apothecary I could see being really cool. Definitely opens it up to multiple roles. I'd ship an Apothecary. I think that'd be really good.
Enhancement Shaman, so don't really know if that'll be a thing. Then we
It's not really Enhancement Shaman though, because Enhancement Shaman you're literally playing Elementalist. Like, you're playing more than Maelstrom weapon procs and sending out your spells than you are enhancing your weapons. So I disagree with that. I don't think Enhancement Shaman has anything or much to do with enhancing your weapons and using them, and more to do with sending out Elemental Blasts and literally being a carbon copy of Elemental Shaman, if arguably a little bit better designed.
We've got two that distinctly don't feel like World of Warcraft. They're quite cosmic-y though, so there's the Astrologian. If you're a Final Fantasy player, you'll know that. It's a spellcaster using stars and gravity magic.
So an
Basically
Astromancer.
just sounds like an advanced arcane mage. And then the Celestial Lancer. That would be a melee that leaps about the place using spears and titan magic. Again,
This would be
if you play
boring
Final
and
Fantasy
goofy.
14, you'll know that's basically a dragoon. So you might be wondering,
Yeah.
like,
I don't
what the
think
hell?
that'd be
That
good.
is so much stuff. How could Blizzard put anywhere near any of this into the game? Well, that's a good question. The answer here to all of this is Blizzard, well, they have ideas, but they don't have a firm direction, and that is why they're doing a survey. Surveys like this are designed to find out what kind of fantasies would land the hardest with players. And to make sense of that, we just need to look to the past. Look at the Evoker, right? That landed to a mixed at best response. It was a mid-range twink dragon caster, whenever what most people wanted was basically some extremely roided up, muscle-bound, crush-my-face daddy Chad dragon, which is obviously what they didn't get. So the idea of Blizzard heavily, like,
Hello.
The tea for me, Cal.
Thank you. Right.
market testing, seeing what ideas gel with
Yeah,
people,
that's very true.
that's pretty damn obvious. They want to drop this news on a stream
my dad's a
of,
legend.
say, Gamescom next year and have the crowd explode with joy. If the Midnight expansion isn't to have a new class, this is them teeing up the big things that they want to do at the Last Titan. And if Midnight is giving us player housing as its big back-of-the-box feature, well, maybe Blizzard do decide to go as hard as they can on classes for the Last Titan. I would certainly say...
Sorry, bud, do you fancy bacon?
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sell copies of the game. Going back to the survey,
Chat.
we know which ones that they would most likely want to give us because it asks about those in more detail before asking for rankings of the rest. And those are Prismatic, Bard, Gunner, and Astrologian. So the questions here are specifically how well a class fits in the Warcraft universe, how interested the player filling out the survey would be in playing it, and how adding that would basically impact their World of Warcraft experience. That's what they've got for those, but for the rest of the concepts, they basically just show you a few things and ask you which you would be most likely or unlikely to play. Okay, let's take our hype meters down and try to discuss this a little bit more rationally. So the next question is when, and the...
So, like, my worry is what would be introduced would just be, like, something heavily voted upon by a really niche minority of the player base, which have an annoying and destructive voice for the game. It's why we have Orgvoker, who that same player base now actually hates Orgvoker being in the game. That's my worry with doing stuff like this. So, I think Blizz just needs to learn from the outrage of Evoker and do something, like Bellular just said, some big chat daddy destroying things. Like, people like that. People like to feel powerful. So let them. Don't give us another bottom bitch to play.
Answer is again obvious. It's the Last Titan. Midnight is just over a year or so away. I know that sounds crazy, but that is actually how the dates are lining up, and we already know about the player housing. If Blizzard were asking about class concepts for Midnight, that would basically mean that they would be deciding on that and making a whole class in time for Alpha, which...
There's no way we get a new class in Midnight, is 100% correct. Unless Blizzard rush it, which, well, they have been rushing a lot of things lately.
I mean, to call that too fast would be putting it lightly. Though it is of course true that for World of Warcraft's history, we used to get a class every other expansion, but that trend did stop with Shadowlands. It was the first odd-numbered expansion to ship without one, so they did kind of break the pattern there. And with hero talents and warbands this expansion and player housing taking up the marketing banner in Midnight, I think it does track that the Last Titan would need.
So is the loudest crying people that get their way? Unfortunately, very true. When we play the game, we want to change, the majority don't want. Yeah. I think you can see this in a lot of the popular people on Twitter, for example. They're quite a handful. I'm trying to be polite. And I don't mean to generalise everyone on there, but there's definitely a large group of people, probably the majority in there, who don't speak for the player base. They're so out of touch of like what the whole player base want. And they will scream and push the narratives which they want. And they'll create this echo chamber to make it look like it's popular. But then, if you actually take back, it's like, have a look at this. It's like, okay, you've got big support. How much support? About 10,000 people. Right. Now, what's the chances I go on an Asmongold video, which I'm sure that entire 10,000 group of people disagree with, and Asmongold's there like, we've got 20,000 people all supporting, and you've got a situation where it's like, well, Asmongold's people are pushing to be like, oh, well, we don't listen to him, we don't like his narrative, but he's got much bigger support from a bigger group of WoW players. But then, even then, that's still the minority. Like, I'm sorry, we have multiple millions of people who are fans of World of Warcraft. And when you're just here, not even 100,000 people supporting you, like, you don't even, well, I mean, yeah, no, you've got, let's say there's 7 million players. You need 70,000 people supporting you to be 1% of the player base. Like, of the whole wide player base of everything. There's people who've quit WoW who still love WoW and would love to come back to WoW, but they don't like what's going on now, and their input is still pretty damn valid. Healing changes crying just took power away from tanks, made more AoE bursts. Yeah, like, this is something which only the top very minute percentage of player base who spam Mythic Plus all the time are like, this isn't tanks are dominating everywhere. So they've ruined the game for everyone. And then these Mythic Plus players who complained about it in the first place have then gone back and said, oh no, how could Blizzard do this? Well, you asked for it because you're so out of touch with the game in general. Like, I'm sorry, but when they give you what you want and then you cry about it, maybe you shouldn't be getting the call anymore. And by all means, you could get things wrong a few times. You can make mistakes. That is fair. Everyone's human. But these people are consistently doing it. Our fixes as well. Very much so. I think like I really like what they've done with the affixes. I think the affixes now are so much more fun in Mythic Plus than they've ever been. But now they're crying about it. And it's like, well, what do you want? Please just say what you want. And be specific this time. Actually think about it. Stop doing the same brain dead plastered, oh, Liquid Max said this, and I really like Liquid Max, so I'm gonna go and follow that. No. He can make his own opinions. So can you. You also have a brain. You are a cognitive human. Like, no shade to him this time. But like he's just the example I decided to pick. There's plenty of other scenarios and probably better examples to use than who I chose, but yeah. Restarted. Yep. I'll take that instead of potentially getting banned. But yeah, no. People do need to, actually think about what they really want instead of copying and pasting the same opinions or just agreeing. Especially when these changes do get implemented, you can't just say, "Oh yeah, that's great," and then you get the change and be like, "Oh no, it's not actually good. Why did I say that?" It's like, well, you dug your own grave. is what it is.
A class to actually spice it up and get people excited. And that would obviously explain how Azeroth and Titan stuff is just deeply rooted in like all of these different concepts. Like every new class that we've ever gotten in World of Warcraft was tied directly to the story of the expansion that it shipped in.
True.
So it is really all lining up. And if we assume that, there are things we could just cut out of the list, right? Like Witch, Apothecary, Battle Mage. They're quite generic. They don't really feel like things that would scream
Got an Apothecary, am I right? Nah, I get it. No, I feel like Apothecary would, it'd have a good niche to come in as a spec. What was the list you said? Like, I feel like Witch would also have a place, like an Occultist, and taking, like, Affliction and Shadow out of Warlock and Priest, and then create another spec, and then boom, you got a better standalone class, and you can fill the gaps in the other, standing classes with something more fitting.
Battle Mage. They're quite...
Nah, Battle Mage would be great for the game. There's not a melee that really utilizes spells that well. General magic in a sense. Like, I'm sorry, but DK doesn't utilize death magic. It's just plague magic and frost magic and blood magic. Cool, but what about actual death magic? Retribution's like holy magic. Like, there's nothing that really feels like, okay, I'm slapping you big arcane abilities, big cosmic abilities, big fell, fire, whatever. The really destructive, chaotic magics. It's something I know I really enjoy. Maybe I'm just speaking for only myself. But yeah, it's something I'd put on support.
Generic. They don't really feel like things that would scream The Last Titan. This is the expansion where you do the JRPG thing and kill God at the end. So that's them ruled out. I think it would also rule out...
Like, I get it. But at the same time, like, I understand trying to get this link going, but I don't think it has to have this link. But I mean, if this is his lead up to, say, the Titan Slayer, then I'm just going to be forced to agree.
Out the Warden, Spellbreaker, and Necromancer. I think players would love those, but again, they don't really scream the story and Spellbreaker G thing and kill God at the end. So that's them ruled out. I think it would also rule out the Warden, Spellbreaker, and Necromancer. I think players would love those, but again, they don't really scream the story. If Spellbreaker was to happen, you'd probably tie that to the Quel'Thalas revamp, but, well, having that for Midnight does seem pretty damn ambitious. The Gunner and Gunslinger are worth talking about, though, because you might think those are extra unlikely. Adding, say, one-handed guns as whole new weapons in WoW would be a bit of a big step, but honestly...
No, you just do something like, Fury Warriors, and give them Titan script, and they'd be like, okay, just take two-handers. And it would scale the damage down, and balance it out that way, instead of creating a whole new, weapon class, because we don't need another weapon class. And like guns are so underused in general. So, well, just like there's only 2 specs which use guns, bows, and crossbows. So why not branch this out instead of creating something new, which you don't have to?
They did that in Legion with Demon Hunter, so that doesn't completely rule it out. Taking everything into account then, based purely on the survey, I would say the most likely one is probably Bard, right?
Ultra Greatsword would be like... I just feel like it'd be unnecessary. I feel like you'd just use the actual spec to empower the weapon instead of creating a new weapon class for it. And there'd be so many people who's like, well, what about Ultra Mace and what about Ultra Axe? So, at that point, yeah, just I wouldn't introduce another thing like that. Also, Bard coming into the game? Hell no.
Right. That's the one that they're asking about specifically through the survey questions, and
this is a
lead.
most
Generic, like general MMO players, it's very recognizable, far more so than prismatic. People.
Yeah, just make arms better. But if they brought in Bard, then yeah, like I just wouldn't want to play the game. I don't like Bards. I don't think they fit in any MMO. It's just Nah, I wouldn't play a game with bards. I already feel like we've already got stupid crap in the game like Orgvoker, Volpera, like throwing bard. Hello PoE. GGG. I pray for better loot. Give me some divines, please. Nah, like I'm just not interested. Part of the reason I just didn't stick with Lost Ark is, well, bards. It's simply put, I don't respect it. And then they're like artist as well. No, that's just dumb concepts. And the thing is, Blizzard could bring out like this Titan Slayer. They could bring out Tinkers and whatnot. What Blizzard want to do with WoW is keep it unique. There's not much keeping WoW unique to other MMOs, which means if another MMO builds upon MMO systems better than WoW and is cheaper, what do you think people are going to play? If WoW's no longer got its defining feature, like Horde vs Alliance, that's gone. All the brutish nature of WoW is pretty gone. It's becoming more and more generic every single expansion. I wouldn't be surprised if they did a graphical update and they made the game look like an anime. I'm gonna be honest. And if they did that, then, like, quite simply, I might as well play one of the countless other, like, thingy, Asian MMOs out there. WoW would just be the same generic copy and paste slob, which feels like already clogging up the industry. The ending of Dragonflight was so cringe and corny. All that friendship bollocks. It's like, yeah, okay, that's another thing that WoW is failing on. Like, hear me out. Why do you think Classic's doing better than retail? You've just got so much of, like, it's that nitty gritty, dirty, open world fantasy. Yeah. As WoW went on, it got more friendship and lovey and huggy based. But now people are playing Classic because, like, well, that was the war. You were the Horde versus Alliance. Anyone you saw the other faction was killed on sight. You were always working towards building up the war effort and fighting against each other. There were dark stories. Now you're like holding hands with friends and enemies. Alliance and Hordes are like kissing each other that down the back lanes and whatnot. No, just out in the open, because who cares? They're all friends anyway. Throw and Jane are banging. It's like, honestly, everyone should move to Path of Exile. Like, this is the thing. I think the only thing that is going to keep a diehard player base for WoW is the PvP audience. As soon as a game comes along which actually has the same PvP feel, then those guys are gone. And then I think very soon, a lot of the people playing stuff like a lot of WoW's PvE will look for something better. Classic was always bad, to be honest. People just refuse to accept it because of nostalgia. No, I think, like, Classic was good back in the day. These days, it's not a good, like, really, if that came out today, it would not be seen as a very good game. I think the only reason Classic is viewed as good as it is, part of it might be nostalgia, but most people I know are like, been there, done that. And so I don't actually see many people playing for nostalgia. I mean, one of the more devoted Classic players I know is younger than me. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, Vanilla was good for its time. Classic, it's not great. As a game itself, it's not amazing. The only thing is, it's bringing that World of Warcraft feel that retail doesn't have. Yeah, I would agree with, I'd agree. Like, it's more WoW than retail. That's the thing. I also agree. The gameplay of retail, at least playing all my classes and whatnot, feels much more fun. But the game of classic just feels a lot better. Yeah, take care, Nate, and actually maybe don't after that last little comment. Just kidding. Right, let's carry on with the
wouldn't really
video.
know what to make of that. And of course, there's the Radiant song. It just fits Bard. It would make sense. There's actually a reason why the Bard's music would be magical and powerful, as opposed to just, your mates are all just hopped up and good vibes and they're hitting harder.
Just copy and
Though with Bard,
paste
I'm very
slop.
keen to know, like, what kind of weapon they would use. How would that actually function? So, an interesting problem, especially because it would be a supporting tank healer and DPS.
Nah, I'm not gonna lie. I agree. I don't like the playstyle of classic. I think it's really boring. Like, say for a warlock, I just set on my dots and spam shadow bolt. I'm bored. Like, warlock rotation now is so much more fun than it was ever in the classics. Okay, maybe around like cat era, it's actually getting quite a bit more fun. But yeah, like. Nah, I prefer the game. Oh, I agree. Classic is the MMO. It is a better game. It's just the classes are not as fun. And retail, yeah, it does feel like a single player game where you're forced to play multiplayer. And I think the fix to this would be less of a less Mythic Plus. Less arena, less battlegrounds, less raid, and put it right back to its roots. The open world should be where you're spending most of your time. If you want to go in and do these side activities, great, you can do so. You should be allowed to play some of these minigames and have some fun with it. But the open world should always have been Blizzard's priority, and they failed on that. That is why it very much feels like, even with crafting, where like you should be doing collaborative efforts, people don't care. They just click, public order, and send it. They don't talk to anyone. They don't try and work together and put things together for stuff. I mean, it's very rare. Like, I just sit around and I'm like, right, I've got all professions. Whatever you need, give me a shout. And it does feel like we are sitting there chatting, and it's a nice little social experience every now and then. Part of what I like about crafting is that I can be there to help my friends and get them better. But a lot of the time I do just see people like there's no interaction, and there needs to be more things where there are interaction. You should be having to engage with people and work together. Oh, the bots are awful for the game, man. It needs to be addressed.
Bards are traditionally similar to rogues. They tend to fight with very simple weapons, but then use support magic, like, say, the bards in FF, which use a bow. So how Blizzard spins that would be pretty interesting, especially when it comes to giving 3 specs and then hero talents.
I don't
The
think
next
Bard would be
question
interesting
then
at
is,
all.
These are all really cool. Why are we only getting one of them? Could Blizzard do more? My personal hope, actually, is that these...
I so agree with this, but also so disagree with this from a development point of view. To try and do that many classes in one go would be hell for Blizzard. There's so much time where you have to design how every single talent balances out, and then make it so that it'll work with the rest of the game. Decide what is the generic stuff, what is it for each spec. And yeah, like, they can't even handle what they've got now, let alone trying to get multiple classes in one go. Like, yeah. And also, I wholeheartedly believe that there's they don't have enough devs for WoW, and a lot of what is produced is just some slop off of some AI engine. Like, ChatGPT says, oh, yeah, do these balancing changes, and that's what they do.
These ideas are a mixture of hero talents, new specs, and new classes. I mean, we already know that Blizzard are going to expand hero talents. The system is kind of designed so they could do that. So thinking of it in a way, like suddenly Titan Killer as a warrior, or maybe a Demon Hunter, makes total sense. Which, being a Shaman hero talent, makes sense. I mean, Gunslinger as a 4th rogue spec. That would also be pretty cool. Could Blizzard just add some new specs to the game? I mean, I don't see why not.
But he's right. Putting some of this in as like new specs would actually be a lot better than making standalone classes. There's already 13 of them in the game. Thank you. And yeah, like 13 classes. That's a lot to have to know about. So just having new specs, like adding in elements of this in different specs, maybe some as hero talents, I think would just go really hard and be a lot better for the game. Especially like the specs just add in new playstyles, different ways to go for things. Sure, we might not get as much variety as someone like me had hoped for, but it would mean that we're not getting this insane learning curve like in PvP, having to learn like an entire new class with completely new spells and abilities. Would be a bit too hectic in my opinion. Putting Warcraft logs print out into ChatGPT and putting in the patch, yeah, that's what they do, man.
Druids have got 4, it wouldn't kill us to make rogues have a 4. Now, setting aside some balance concerns for a minute, I think the game could just do with more fantasies being opened up to players, and this stuff would work. I mean, just to mention it, it's important that Blizzard keep bringing out tank and healer specs as well.
He's right. There's not a lot of good tank and healers out there. It is very bland and boring what you can play with. Like, there's no dark healers. Not one exists. Discipline's kind of there, but it's not there. So having more would just be better and encourage people to play those roles. I know veteran, but every solution to balancing is just nerfing shit and bringing classes up to broken ones. Yeah, like, of course, sometimes you need nerfs to stop content getting insanely trivial. I respect that, but they over nerf a lot, and which makes people feel bad and enjoy the game a lot less. Like, imagine that. In fact, no, it was a summer or two ago. One of our friends over flew out to England, had a day out. He'd just like done a pretty big push session, and he was excited to get some more going when he came back. While we were sitting down eating lunch, put up my phone while the others were in queue. It's like, yeah, bad news, mate. Your spec's been nerfed. He got back. He had to drop down like 2 or 3 key levels and reprogress. And then he was like, you know what? I've got better things to do in my life. Just stopped. And it's not even like what he was playing was insanely broken. It was just a really, really poor balancing choice from Blizzard. I think if Blizzard want to do the balancing better, they should just get some more devs in. I really don't think they have enough devs looking at this stuff, and they need more people passionate about their game. Like, hire some less experienced devs, like in terms of career-wise, but more experienced WoW players. I swear I'm not saying this because I'm looking for a job. Also make some remote jobs. Come on. Do you really need people in the office? Is that really productive? Big problem now is so many good games out there and it results in people not wanting to deal with this BS. Exactly. People just get bored and be like, right, what do I go play? Path of Exile. I'll go play that. Like, for me, it used to be like Diablo or Overwatch as my fellow games, but those have sucked in recent years. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll go play Path of Exile. I'm gonna start putting Last Epoch into the mix, play some story games, buy some new stuff with Steam Summer Sale, or even so. There's just so many good free-to-play games out there. Like First Descendant might not be the greatest game, but it was like you could just download it and start playing it, try it out. But WoW has got like the sort of same issues, but it's a lot of money you got to spend for it, which is dumb. And also, a lot of the balancing. Okay, I get reining in overpowered classes and bringing underpowered classes up to speed is something that needs to keep being done. But a lot of the balancing issues could easily be solved if they actually moved the game more to an MMO rather than a single player minigame selection. If people were spending more time out in the open world, more team doing some team activities, working together, then I think people would care a lot less about the balance and would be happier for things not to be balanced as well. But just having good content to sink their teeth into. I just see that being better. Exactly that.
New exciting classes will not stop the population issues alone, but if Blizzard can fix the problems that tanks and healers are currently facing, I mean, a new class, that could really get people excited to try out the role. And it would also mean the unique challenges of tanking and healing could be approached from different design angles, which, of course, could appeal to more players. But there is something to keep in mind here. Methodology. This is one survey. Nobody else has shared their survey yet, but you see, surveying users, especially across different languages, audiences, countries, is a complicated and actually fascinating business. To get proper data, you need to send out a load of surveys, and I mean, that surveys that will often have different combinations to work around the biases of different users. So this could only be a small fraction of what Blizzard are actually thinking about. Or it could be that their heart is actually just set on one and they want to make sure that people are down for it. That's, of course, if the survey is real at all. Chromie.de were the people who were posting it. They did imply that multiple players actually sent them in. And indeed, I regularly get in my email surveys that people send in. And very often, those surveys can't really just be posted verbatim online. Because these surveys actually, you know, they will basically say, this is confidential, please do not share. I know it's a little bit like saying, oh, this is my OC, do not steal. People will do whatever they want on the internet. But the point is that often the specific language, even the ordering of questions, can be done to be decently identifiable. And I know a lot of people would say, well, why don't you just look at the forum, look at videos, what people are actually talking about, and get your ideas from there. You see, the thing about these surveys is Blizzard has got one of the most gargantuan email lists on the planet, right? They have millions and millions and millions of emails. So they could send one of these to people who are current subscribers of the game. They could send one of these emails to people who only play Classic. They could send these emails, these surveys, to people who haven't played the game in 5 years. And that will tell them how different segments of World of Warcraft's overall population well, vibe with all of these different ideas. So it's exciting stuff, and if I was a betting man, I would absolutely say...
That's a pretty solid video. I like that. There's a lot of good concepts to explore, I feel like. And it does give hope for a lot of cooler stuff which may be introduced to the game. But, yeah, it would be very cool to see a new class. I want to see it. It would be amazing, and I hope Blizzard do it. But, yeah, if they do it, they have to do it right. And they definitely have to try and tie this game more to be an MMO, as that is just going to be far more entertaining for people. It's going to solve a lot of issues. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about. A lot to talk about. And I think we covered a lot of it.